border is now a regulatory trap. Sanctions, export controls, and seizure risk for large turbine aircraft. Hello, yet again. This is Forrest Owens. I'm an aviation lawyer, a private pilot, and an FAA licensed airframe and power plant mechanic. Finally, let's discuss the third recent litigation trend. And it may be the most underappreciated in all of the large turbine market. The business jet is no longer regulated only by the FAA. Once the aircraft crosses borders, sanctions law, export control, customs rules, and asset forfeiture law can move from background noise to center stage. That point is not theoretical. In March of 2025, the United States filed a verified civil forfeiture complaint in the Southern District of Florida against a Dassault Falcon 900EX, tail number Tango 7, Echo Sierra, Papa Romeo Tango. The complaint alleged that the aircraft was purchased through a nominee structure, smuggled from the United States under false pretenses, and operated for the benefit of Nicolas Maduro and representatives of the Maduro regime in violation of U.S. sanctions and export control laws. The complaint specifically invokes IIEPA, the Export Control Reform Act, the Export Administration Regulations, smuggling statutes, and money laundering theories. The government's theory is worth close study because it reflects how these cases actually develop. According to the complaint, the structure allegedly used a foreign company as a straw purchaser, concealed the true end user, routed funds through multiple jurisdictions, and treated the aircraft as a tool of mobility for a sanctioned regime after export. That is not just a bad closing. It is a map of modern cross-border aircraft risk. This situation and case became even more significant because it did not stand alone. The Justice Department separately announced the February 2025 seizure of a Dassault Falcon 2000EX allegedly used by PDVSA, the sanctioned Venezuelan state-owned oil company. According to the government, that aircraft had been illegally serviced and maintained using U.S. origin parts and support in violation of sanctions and export control restrictions. That is a crucial point for large turbine operators. The regulatory exposure may arise not only from the original sale, but also from maintenance, parts support, and continued operation. So why is this so important for business jets and other large turbine aircraft? Because these aircraft are uniquely suited to become evidence. They have identifiable serial numbers, stable registration histories, maintenance records, flight histories, service footprints, and international movement patterns. They are expensive enough to justify aggressive government investigation and mobile enough to cross multiple legal systems in a short period of time. These cases also show that the compliance failure is often human before it's technical. Someone accepts a beneficial owner explanation without drilling down. Someone treats a newly formed foreign holding company as a real operating principle without asking who actually controls it. Someone files or approves export information without matching it to the real destination, end user or end use. Someone authorizes maintenance support because the aircraft is physically present and the work looks routine. In a sanctions case, the sequence can become the record of knowledge, concealment, or willful blindness. The regulatory framework explains why. The Venezuelan sanctions regulations block dealings for the benefit of the Maduro regime and related blocked parties. The Export Administration regulations impose licensing restrictions tied to end user, including military and military intelligence end users. And the federal smuggling statute reaches exports or attempted exports made contrary to U.S. law. When those authorities are combined in a forfeiture complaint, the aircraft itself becomes the defendant, and the transaction history becomes the proof. There is a broader lesson here for large turbine transactions. Lawyers and deal teams often focus heavily on title, tax, registration, and financing. All of that still matters, but the recent forfeiture filings show that beneficial owner diligence, sanction screening, export classification analysis, and service support controls now belong in the core transaction checklist, not in a late-stage compliance appendix. This is especially true where the aircraft will be based abroad, operated by a foreign principal, and serviced outside the United States, or used for politically exposed persons, state-connected enterprises, or opaque holding structures. A beautifully documented purchase agreement cannot protect an aircraft from seizure if the underlying end-use story is false. So, what's the practical strategy here? Start with the real buyer and real end user, not the nominal buyer. Confirm who will control and benefit from the aircraft after closing. Screen owners, users, brokers, operators, and maintenance vendors for sanctions exposure. Confirm whether export filings, license requirements, and end-user restrictions are implicated before delivery and again before major cross-border movement or support. And remember that U.S. origin parts and technical support can create fresh legal risk long after the original acquisition closes. The memorable closing point is this. A large turbine aircraft crosses borders quickly, but legal risk crosses with it. In short, the recent cross-border aircraft cases show that a business jet can move from prized asset to seized asset when the transaction file hides the true user, the true destination, or the true purpose. For owners, operators, and advisors, that means regulatory diligence can no longer stop at the FAA registry. Remember this, in modern large turbine aviation, the border is not the end of regulation. It is where the most expensive regulation begins. Thank you again for your interest in this topic. This information is provided for informational purposes only, and it should not be construed as legal advice. Please direct questions, and questions are welcome to admin@aviationlegalcounsel.com. We look forward to helping you navigate these issues and answer your questions with precision.